Hey everyone, welcome to Out of Spec Guide. I'm Max, and with me is my friend Austin.
Howdy, everyone. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me on,
Yeah,
Max.
no problem. I thought you'd be a perfect kind of first guest to have on because you are an EV nerd like I am, but also you're kind of in the potential position of being a first-time EV buyer, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking at Teslas right now. I've been a long time fan, and especially the Model Y is really what my wife and I are exploring since I currently have a Subaru Crosstrek in that same crossover category. So that's what I'm looking at. But as you mentioned, I like to stay broadly aware of the whole EV space because I just like all of it.
Yeah, it's a super fascinating space. Maybe I'm biased, but I think it is. And everyone's looking at EVs all the time, but especially nowadays with the Tesla price cuts, which we'll probably do a future episode on, a lot of people like yourself are looking at Model Y, Model 3. So this episode, to start off, I want to talk about charging at a very basic level for first-time EV buyers, like based off which car you're going to get, what's charging going to be like, or I guess put even more simply, I get a Tesla. Where can I plug it in? I get a Ford Lightning pickup truck. Where can I plug that in? Right. That's what we want to kind of go over today. So your Model Y, I guess let's start with that, or any Tesla, because that's kind of the most immediate, I think, and easy to understand thing. So what I have here is Tesla's charging page that I'm going to pull up. Um, so if we add that to the stream here, we're looking at Tesla's charging page. And Austin, can you kind of give us a summary of, as you understand it, how the Tesla charging experience works?
Yeah, so it's going to be the same at home and at a public supercharger, which is one of the advantages of it that I'm sure we'll get into, where you take a cord, whether it's hanging on your wall or at a supercharger, and you bring it in front of your charge port, if that's here, and you can click the little button on it, which you can't see really in this picture, but there's a button on the top that you click, and that opens the charge port. You plug it in, and that little T logo that was just showing there lit up green, it will flash blue, and then it will flash green to let you know you're charging. Little fun fact, the faster it is blinking, it means that is your state of charge is lower. But that's it. If you're at a supercharger, it's connected to your account, so it charges whatever credit card is linked to your Tesla account. If you're at home, it's linked to your meter, so it's just charging your electric bill.
Yeah, super concise and simple. Thanks for explaining that. I do think it's super cool. I don't know if Tesla has a patent on this, that they hide the charging thing in the tail light there. I don't know. I don't, any other EV does that, but that's kind of a first good tip for first-time Tesla buyers. You're like, where do I charge it? It is that left tail light, that hidden spot there. Super clever.
Yep, that's
And
right. And you
Tesla
can even
does a
do a voice
great.
command from the screen to open that if you want to.
Yeah, you gotta love all the technology going on in Teslas. But yeah, super well integrated, very easy to understand. Like you said, whether you're at home or you're on the road on a road trip, the charging situation is the same. Now, you will charge much faster at official Tesla superchargers on a road trip. And like you said, you're going to be billed once you set up your Tesla account with their app. You just plug in, as I understand it, and you're billed automatically.
Yep, that's right. And then when you're done, you just pop it out and hook it back on the supercharger and you're on your way. There'll be a little summary on the screen of you charged 40 kilowatt hours and that was $5.
Yes. And this is the beauty of Tesla, really, is we're not, and we sound like Tesla fans. I have my issue with Tesla vehicles, but their supercharging network is a huge, huge advantage still that only Teslas can leverage. So you buy any Tesla Model S, Y, 3, X, the upcoming Cybertruck, maybe one day, they're all going to use this charging standard. And you don't have to be a nerd and understand your kilowatts or any of this stuff because they just work. Now, I do want to iterate that we're talking mainly about public charging today, but really, I would recommend no matter which electric car you buy, getting home charging set up, whether that be a Tesla charging station or, as we'll talk about later, the other charging standards that other vehicles use. Because you're going to save money. Like you said, it's on your meter. You pay your power company, but it's really not that much. We're talking about, like, depending on where you live, less than $10 to fully charge your car overnight. Probably less if you depleted the range. Daily, you're going to be paying way less. When you're charging on the road, you're paying a higher rate for electricity for that convenience. I don't know what the kilowatt hour rate is for Tesla. I guess it varies regionally, but you can expect to pay less than you'd pay for a tank of gas, but substantially more than you would pay at home.
Yeah, and it'll tell you it varies regionally, station to station, and on time of day. And if you click on a station on the Tesla display, it'll actually show you the live price and how busy it is. But you're absolutely right. It'll be no more expensive than gas would be.
Yep, which is really nice. Oftentimes cheaper. Now gas is getting really cheap again, so maybe they're more comparable. But again, supercharging, fast charging anytime publicly is going to be the most expensive way you can charge because you're just paying for, putting in those watts rapidly into the car's battery. Another thing I want to mention with Tesla is because there's so much adoption of Tesla and their chargers are pretty slim and unobtrusive, there are a lot of installations of Tesla chargers in hotels, parking lots. You've probably seen them, right, with that T logo. So if you have a Tesla, you can just plug in there.
Yep, and you can find that really easily on their website on the page that you're on and on PlugShare. Which is a great app. You can filter by Tesla destination chargers. Would be the smaller ones at hotels, and oftentimes those are slower, but they're free, which is awesome if you're traveling and can stay overnight somewhere. You can get a free charge.
Super helpful. Yeah, there's usually space at them. Some of them are getting congested as more and more people get Teslas, but yeah, the speed is really, like you said, not something to worry about at a lot of these places. Because let's say it's a hotel, you are just going to trickle charge overnight, or even if you're getting, lunch somewhere at a restaurant that provides these, an hour or two, on that will add quite a bit of range to your car. And if you're doing the superchargers, those big boys we had earlier up here, you're adding a lot of range very quickly. Potentially even more in the future. Tesla's always kind of pushing the curve of what they can do with fast charging. So super nice to see.
Yeah, that's right. Because even superchargers are all going to be between about 150 and 250 kilowatts right now, which what that means for a normal person is if you're on a road trip, you are probably stopping for between 10 and 20, maybe 30 minutes. And it's not going to be 8 hours like you see some people say. You're going to be well on your way by the time you've gotten your burger or gone to the bathroom or whatever you need to do while you're stopping. Your car is going to be ready.
Yeah, which is awesome. Just, forget about it. Now, that said, we'll have episodes on this later. Please don't be plugged in indefinitely. Don't be that person because there are other EV drivers, whether it's Tesla or anything else. One more thing before we move on from Tesla I want to talk about is another advantage of Tesla is you actually can use the CCS or combined charging system network. This is the standard basically every other EV on the market uses. And with this kind of interesting adapter from Tesla, which they've released recently, you can plug it into your car and charge your Tesla at public stations that aren't Tesla branded. So your Electrify Americas, your EV Goes, your ChargePoint. Now, it is CCS, you're dealing with that network, so you're going to have to deal with payment processing and communication through that charge operator. We'll have episodes later on explaining how you charge with Electrify America and how you charge with ChargePoint, because their apps are of varying quality and intuitive use. But Austin, what do you think of this kind of just flexibility, being able to buy this, what is it, $250 adapter and stick it into your Tesla?
It's awesome. And I think it's awesome for a couple reasons. One is more amusing to me personally. It just showcases just how massive that CCS charger is relative to the Tesla one. I mean,
Yeah.
that looks a little silly. But it's just really cool because it means that every Tesla on the road has access to basically 99% of all charging stations out there. They have the superchargers and they have everyone else's chargers as well. Whereas everyone else, at least for now, just has the CCS and CHAdeMO chargers.
Yes, huge amount of flexibility. There is a CHAdeMO adapter too. We'll talk about CHAdeMO and all these other charging standards. So that's a lot of good coverage on Tesla. If you think that's complicated, well, we're going to move on to CCS. So like I've been saying, CCS is what every other car uses, right? Essentially, we'll talk about an exception here in a minute. But it stands for the Combined Charging System. And like you just said, Austin, this port is big. It's like a big boy, as you saw with the Tesla adapter. Let me share the screen here. So it's developed by Charin, which is basically a consortium of companies, including Tesla, actually, that all kind of have standardized around this connector. And funnily enough, this won't apply to our American viewers, which I think will be most of our audience. But for folks in Europe, your Tesla actually uses this too. They use the CCS Combo 2 standard in Europe. We use CCS Combo 1, and Teslas, because of regulations, don't have to use it. So they use their own arguably superior port. But in America, for every vehicle that isn't a Tesla or a Nissan Leaf that's an electric currently sold that uses DC fast charging, there is the standard CCS, combined charging system. Why is it combined? Well, it's combined because touching on your note of how just big this connector is, let me go back to actually the Tesla page because they illustrate it pretty well in terms of the size of it. What it's doing is, so this like upper part here is what you actually plug in at home, or lower, slower stations, the AC part of it. And then this bottom part, this bottom half, is what fast chargers have. They're actually the direct current pins for that high-speed charging you're going to use on the road. That's why this charging standard is so clunky and big. They basically try to incorporate it into one, right? I think we had the AC standard first, and then they added the DC standard. But yeah, CCS is what you will have on your Ford Lightning, your Ioniq 5 from Hyundai. I mean, basically every other vehicle that is not Tesla and is not a Nissan Leaf. There's actually a lot of CCS chargers, which people don't realize. And some of them are actually quite high speed. Electrify America has units that charge very quickly, on par with the Tesla stuff. We're talking like 10 to 80% battery on your car in 20 minutes. But the story with CCS is kind of a reliability one. So Austin, you watched their videos and stuff. What's the picture you have of the CCS network for everyone, right? That's not on a Tesla and its reliability.
I think Kyle said it well in summary is if you plan on road tripping, either get a gas car or get a Tesla because the CCS network has quite a bit of issues, particularly with Electrify America, it seems. And part of that is it's two main issues, right? One is each station has usually 2 or 4 actual charging cords that you can plug into. So there's not that many cords at each station. And so if only a couple of them are down, as is often the case, that has a huge impact on how many people can charge there. And that is the other issue, is not only are there not that many, but the downtime is quite high, is what seems to be the problem in a lot of places where even on a bright sunny day, they'll not work. Sometimes without warning, even as Kyle has pointed out, as the app will show, hey, 4 of 4 are available, ready to go. And then you try and plug in and it just won't work. And that's a big issue, right? And sometimes it's on brand new Electrify America stations. They just did a whole big revamp last fall, I believe. And even a lot of those stations are down for seemingly no reason. Now, that's not all the case. I don't want to paint it to be that Electrify America never works or it's guaranteed to fail, but it is enough of a problem to be, I think, a big concern and something worth considering for someone who is looking at a non-Tesla EV.
Yeah, it's not a recommendation, right? The Kyle's thing, get a Tesla or a gas car that we want to make. We obviously want competition in this space. We want more options, but charging networks like Electrify America and others have just been dropping the ball with maintaining their stations, keeping them reliable. Now, they're all talking a big game about improving this, but right now the situation, if you watch the reviews at a spec channel or have maybe even just seen mainstream headlines about electric cars, the situation is kind of grim. I want to reiterate, none of this applies to home charging. Home charging is honestly pretty similar, whether you're using Tesla or your car has CCS. It's a similar story. But this has to do with infrastructure on the ground for taking those road trips, for going, on longer drives. Theoretically, like you were saying, when it works, it actually can work, well. Kyle has shown he did a cross-country trip in the Porsche Taycan several years ago. He set a cannonball record in an EV. He actually beat the Tesla Model 3's time because he found all the right high-power Electrify America stations that happened to work very well at that time. Now, the unfortunate reality of what we're seeing is a lot of those stations, just like you're saying, don't have high uptime. they've been down for various reasons. Or in some cases, the stations have, this can be confusing for first-time EV buyers, different power ratings. Some chargers will charge much faster than other DC fast chargers. For instance, Electrify America, and now I think EVgo are rolling out, right, the 350 kilowatt units. This is basically the high power state of DC charging for electric cars right now. Not every car can accept that. And I would say if you have an electric car like a Mustang Mach-E or a Audi e-tron that can't accept the full charging rate, don't do it. We'll talk about how to know which charging rate your car accepts later, but basically don't plug into the high power station with a lower powered car because you might be taking that from someone who needs a high power station. It's not like Tesla where their superchargers are, very transparent to the user and they all work pretty similarly. There's just a lot of variation. I've been talking a lot about Electrify America because they're the biggest network. They were actually created from the Dieselgate settlement where Volkswagen was cheating on their emissions. And so as punishment, they had to make this charging network. So maybe they don't have the best incentive for, maintaining it. I'm not saying anything really, but just that, it's dubious why Electrify America is so bad. Now, not everyone is that bad. Electrify America, like I said, can be good on their good days. And there's ChargePoint, there's other operators. But those stations, are just, it's a matter of them being reliable, rolled out everywhere, and then even finding them, right? When you have a Tesla, your Tesla navigates you to the superchargers on your route really well. It just tells you where to stop. With apps like, with networks like Electrify America, you're dependent on using their app or a third-party service like PlugShare to kind of route for you, or your vehicle's routing, which is hit or miss. So that's kind of why road tripping right now in an EV that isn't a Tesla is very possible, but you might have to be more of an EV nerd, and it's just probably going to, result in a little more frustration than with Tesla's proprietary system.
Yeah, and I think that's the big difference is I would, especially for CCS chargers, recommend looking on PlugShare, like plan your route out. A better route planner is great for that. And then look at each charger that it says you should go to on PlugShare and look at the reviews. Don't just look at the rating, but look at the actual reviews because people will say, hey, this says 404 available. It's actually down. Skip this charger. It's not going to work. Then you can know ahead of time rather than pulling up and needing to charge there and you can't. And then you've got to limp down the road to get a trickle charge somewhere for a couple hours before you can continue your trip. So like you said, it is possible to avoid that with some proper planning, but it is going to take a little bit more work on the front end. And real quick, I'll hit on another point you said. This applies to the maybe couple times a year that people travel more than 100 miles from home. On a day-to-day basis, just about any EV is going to be more than adequate for getting you to work, around town, even shorter road trips. This is only when you're going more than like 300 miles for a lot of people.
Yeah, so for most people, this is probably not an everyday situation. Ideally, there's a lot of deals right now where people can buy a car like a Volkswagen ID4 and get 3 years of free charging on, let's say, Electrify America. And we'll have episodes about this too, but Kyle and I are always kind of on the case that this is creating bad habits for people. Because really, if you have an electric car, you should get your home charger set up. Yes, it's an initial outlay cost, but you're going to end up saving so much money paying your utility versus paying a ChargePoint operator whose goal is to make money theoretically off your DC fast charging. We can talk later about whether they're actually doing that and how good of a job they're doing at it. But they're trying to charge you more for the convenience of their fast chargers on the road. We just wish that there would be they'd make sure those chargers work more often. But yeah, thank you for suggesting a better route planner too. That is a great third-party app for that you can install on your phone. And I think it has a CarPlay integration too. So one of the benefits that I like about cars that aren't Tesla is because their own software is worse, they let you use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, which is where you plug in your phone and you can use your phone apps on your car screen. I always love when cars have that. So that is one thing you can do. Use apps like PlugShare and a better route planner through CarPlay on your non-Tesla EV.
Yep, absolutely.
The last kind of standard I want to touch on, the last standard that there is CHAdeMO. It's a weird one. I always struggle with spelling it, but basically all the letters are capital except E. There's a lowercase e in there. And CHAdeMO is primarily actually a Japanese standard, but this is relevant because the Nissan Leaf, which is one of the first EVs to have mass adoption, right up there with the original Model S, is on CHAdeMO. It always has been since the beginning because Nissan's a Japanese company. They've just chosen to do it. It's a little bit unfortunate because in the US, it's just becoming less and less common. I know there's like CHAdeMO apologists or fans out there, and I don't know what to tell you, but CHAdeMO is not what the US is going towards, right? We're living in a world of Tesla and CCS currently. So CHAdeMO is really, there are some other vehicles like the Mitsubishi i-MiEV that use CHAdeMO, but I don't think any of those are on sale today. It's really just the Nissan Leaf, to my knowledge. Have you ever used the CHAdeMO plug, Austin, or seen one?
I have seen them before. I have never used one because, like you said, it's sort of a niche use case at this point. Still potentially useful, perhaps less and less so, but I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I should, reiterate, because there will be people in the comments. In the US, CHAdeMO is a dying standard, and I'm just going to be straight up. It is a dying standard. You're seeing them, just for clarity here, most stations that have CCS, like Electrify America and ChargePoint, will have at least one stall that has a CHAdeMO option as well as CCS. My advice would be to you, if you're an EV buyer or EV owner, and you have a car that isn't CHAdeMO, take the stall that doesn't have CHAdeMO just to leave it open for the Leaf owner or whoever does need CHAdeMO, because usually, because it's a declining standard, you only see one out of, let's say, 4 stalls usually offering the option for CHAdeMO. But CHAdeMO, like CCS, is a theoretically public standard that anyone can use and that all of the charge point operators have adopted. I should say that in Japan, CHAdeMO is much more relevant because it's a kind of Japanese adopted standard. Even brand spanking new electric cars like the BMW iX in Japan actually, believe it or not, use CHAdeMO. So CHAdeMO, I think, is going to be with us for a while, especially in the Japanese market. But in the US, I think it's increasingly less and less relevant. But for those of you looking for cheaper electric cars and shopping for Nissan Leafs, it's something you will want to know about.
For sure. And the CHAdeMO, my understanding of it is that cross section we looked at earlier, it's essentially the top part of the CCS charger, just minus the 2 massive pins at the bottom.
It looks that way. It's kind of shaped like a circle, but it's funny because if you can see on this Nissan Leaf, so this orange cap is actually the top part of that CCS charger, the J1772, what you would plug in at home. CHAdeMO is an entirely separate beast. Let me see if I can find a image on their site of the face of it here. But it's kind of a funny looking array of circles and shapes with that CHAdeMO connector. I'll just do an image search here. But yeah, the CHAdeMO connector is just funny looking. It's not as bulky as CCS because it's just DC, but it does, I think, look quite funky. Here's a great image, if I can pull it up, of basically 3 things side by side. So this is a CCS port in the middle, which we've seen. I think that's a Tesla on the right, which is the slimmest, and then CHAdeMO on the left, which is quite bulky and has this interesting array of circles, basically. Here's another kind of breakdown of it. So yeah, CHAdeMO it's a funky looking port. Like CCS and like the Tesla one, all these ports are locking. I think I want to talk about in future episodes. When you public charge, you might worry, I leave my car, what's going to happen? These cables do lock onto your car. So when your car is locked, you can't just remove these cables, which is nice. But yeah, that is basically a summary. CCS, Tesla, CHAdeMO. That's the state of charging in the US currently. So yeah, I think you said it best early on, or paraphrasing Kyle, basically road tripping, if it's something you do regularly and you just want to get there and you have no preference, then you really, I think, have to consider Tesla in the EV world above all else. They're just doing the best job at it so far. Now, there's interesting conversations to be had about, will Tesla open their charging network up to other EVs, maybe through the use of an adapter, or maybe other car makers will actually use Tesla's charging port in the future. Who knows? This is an open question. It's not really a reality on the market yet, but it's something interesting to think about for the future. But yeah, right now for EV buyers, Austin, it sounds like your advice or where you're leaning is just Tesla, in large part because of the charging.
Yeah, the charging network is a huge, huge thing because my wife and I love going on road trips. Her family is from across the state, so that would be really stretching it if we tried to not use public charging, and we just don't want to have to think about it that much. And with the recent reductions in Tesla's prices, I mean, the Model Y compared to like a Mustang Mach-E, the Model Y used to be way more expensive. Now suddenly it's cheaper,
Yeah.
and that's not even including the tax credit. So there's been a huge power shift towards Tesla, in my opinion, for people on a budget that now it's way more accessible. I
Yep.
think it's worth considering. And one other one for viewers who maybe are like, well, I've heard of CCS and I've heard of CHAdeMO and I've heard of Tesla, but I've heard of NACS. What is that? The North American Charging Standard. That is basically Tesla's plug that they have now opened up for other automakers to potentially use. As Max and I were talking a little bit before this, right now Aptera is the only one doing it, which is a very small brand that viewers can Google if they want to. But yeah, it's basically the same Tesla plug, just opened up so anyone else can use it. But right now, it's basically just Tesla's.
Yeah, basically just Tesla's. They have officially extended the invitation. And like you said, Aptera, a very niche kind of startup making an interesting three-wheeled vehicle, has said they'll adopt it. So that's cool. I personally would love if, a lot of EVs adopted this because for the reasons we've outlined, its size, it's the small, slim connector, the ubiquity of Tesla superchargers. I'd love to see NACS or NACS on EVs. Will it happen? I don't know. It's very much up in the air. The automakers all have a lot of pride. I think there's a lot of kind of us versus them sentiment between Tesla and everyone else in the industry. So in terms of will it actually roll out, I don't know. And I'm kind of pessimistic on it, but it is something we should bring up and maybe a point for the future.
Yeah, and I think for people, the biggest reason I see of people that are want to definitely not go with Tesla is Elon Musk. There's a lot of people that really don't like him. There's a lot of decent, at least, reasons to not like him. All I would say is, consider all of the devices and objects you know and use and love on a daily basis, and how much the CEO of those companies affects your usage of those things. I think it's possible to drive a Tesla and have a burning hatred for Elon Musk, and that's okay. So for anyone is avoiding it for that reason, I would urge you to test drive one and reconsider. But yeah, if you are diehard not Tesla, or maybe you just really want a Ford or a Hyundai, that is totally possible. None of what Max and I are saying is that, oh, it's ridiculous, it's impossible, don't do it. It'll just take a little bit more work on the front end. I think if people are diligent and look at PlugShare and just make sure that they've done their research, it's totally possible. People take road trips in non-Teslas all the time.
Yeah, they do it. And it's really, frankly, in my opinion, not on the vehicle end. I think all the vehicles are great, especially these new Hyundais, Genesis coming out, the Porsche Taycan. Obviously, these are high-end vehicles, but the vehicles offering this 800-volt fast charging, they really are theoretically, capable of matching Tesla's charge rate, even exceeding it. But it's really up to the charging infrastructure on the ground to improve to really realize that potential. So I wouldn't really, yeah, like in terms of making your vehicle choice, if you have to make it on an infrastructure right now, I totally get it. But yeah, you can separate Tesla, the company, from Elon Musk. You can separate the vehicles from the charging network. They're all separate things, but they're all something to consider. So I think we rambled on a lot, but thank you so much for coming on and kind of giving your thoughts. And I hope you and your wife get that Model Y or look at it because those price cuts are super compelling right now.
Yeah, thanks, Max. We're definitely looking at it for the next very, very soon now. But we'll be keeping updated with everything going on.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure.